Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. My grandfather was something of a local legend in our rural community. He wasn't rich by any means, but he was passionate about conservation and spent his life protecting a beautiful 15-acre forest lot that had been in our family for 3 generations. The property contains some of the last remaining old-growth oak and hickory trees in the county, with some specimens estimated to be over 200 years old. There's also a small section of wetland that hosts several protected plant species including blue flag, iris, and cardinal flower. Growing up, I spent nearly every summer exploring those woods with my grandfather. He taught me the name of every tree, every bird, and every wildflower. This land isn't just ours, he'd tell me. We're just its caretakers for a little while. When he passed away 3 years ago, I inherited the property, along with his meticulous records of every tree, plant species, and wildlife sighting. I live about 2 hours away in the city now, but I drive out once a month to check on the property, clear fallen branches, and maintain the small walking paths my grandfather had created. The property was my connection to him, and I took my role as its caretaker seriously. My grandfather was also incredibly thorough about property boundaries. When a dispute arose with a previous neighbor about 15 years ago, he had the entire property professionally surveyed. The surveyor installed permanent markers, metal stakes with bright orange caps, at regular intervals around the perimeter. He also had detailed survey documents drawn up, which I kept in a fireproof safe. Everything was fine until about a year ago, when a new family moved into the property that bordered the southern edge of my forest lot. I didn't meet them immediately, as their house was set back from the road and I usually accessed my property from the northern entrance, where I park my car. During one of my monthly visits last spring, I decided to walk the full perimeter to check for any winter damage. When I reached the southern boundary, I stopped in my tracks, completely shocked by what I saw. A tall, expensive-looking wooden fence cut directly through what I knew was my property, extending at least 100 feet beyond the boundary line. The fence enclosed approximately 5 acres of my land, including some of the oldest trees and part of the protected wetland area. But what really made my blood boil was what was on the other side of the fence. They had cleared a significant portion of the forest, cut down at least a dozen mature trees, and installed an enormous in-ground pool with an expansive patio. The survey markers had been removed completely. I walked around to their front door and rang the bell. A woman answered, dressed in workout clothes and designer sunglasses perched on her head. "Hi, I'm the owner of the forest lot behind your property," I said as calmly as possible. "I noticed there seems to be an issue with your fence placement. It's actually cutting through my property by quite a bit." Her demeanor changed immediately. "Oh, you must be confused," she said with a condescending smile. "We had that land surveyed before we built. That's all our property." "I'm afraid there's been a mistake," I replied. "My grandfather had the property surveyed years ago, and there were permanent markers that clearly showed the boundary." "Well, those must have been wrong," she said, folding her arms. "Besides, it was all just unused forest. We've actually improved it. You should be thanking us." I felt my face getting hot. Those unused woods contain protected species and old-growth trees that have been in my family for generations. I'd like to resolve this amicably, but that fence needs to be moved. "I don't think so," she snapped. "We've been using this land for nearly a year now. Ever heard of adverse possession? It's ours now, and we've spent a lot of money developing it. My husband's attorney will be in touch if you continue harassing us." She shut the door in my face. I was fuming as I walked back through the woods to my car. On the way, I noticed advertising flyers scattered near a trash can by their back gate. Picking one up, I was shocked to see they were renting out their expansive backyard oasis for pool parties at $500 a pop. When I got home, I did some research and found their social media accounts. She had been posting photos of their 5-acre backyard retreat for months, tagging a real estate business and hosting paid events. There were pictures of dozens of people enjoying parties in what was clearly my forest. In one particularly infuriating post, she wrote, "Expanded the backyard, goodbye ugly old trees, hello paradise." I immediately called a property attorney in the area who specialized in boundary disputes. After explaining the situation and sending over my grandfather's survey documents, he suggested we get a new survey done to document the current situation. The results confirmed what I already knew. They had encroached approximately 4.8 acres onto my property. But the survey revealed something even more concerning. Their fence and pool construction had damaged the root systems of several protected trees, and they had filled in part of the wetland area, which was protected under state environmental regulations. My attorney advised me to also consult with an environmental lawyer, given the protected status of some of the flora. The environmental attorney was even more concerned when I showed her my grandfather's detailed records of the property's ecological features. "This is a significant violation," she told me. "Not only have they encroached on your property, but they've damaged protected habitat. The county environmental office needs to be notified immediately. I filed formal complaints with both the county property office and the environmental protection department. The environmental office was particularly interested because my grandfather had registered the property as a conservation area due to the presence of several state-listed species of concern. Things escalated when a friend who works in real estate sent me a listing that had just hit the market. It was their house, and they were advertising it as sitting on 7 acres with an extensively landscaped backyard retreat, when their actual lot was only about 2 acres. They were trying to sell their house with my land included. My attorneys moved quickly to file an emergency injunction to stop the sale, along with formal legal action for the property encroachment, environmental damage, and timber theft. The timber alone, some of those oaks were over 150 years old, was valued at nearly $30,000. During the investigation, we discovered they had obtained a pool permit by submitting falsified property documents that didn't match county records. The permit office had apparently never verified the property lines, and they had conveniently forgotten to mention the wetland area in their application. Things moved fairly quickly after that. The county issued a stop work order on any further development of their backyard and forced them to remove their house from the market pending resolution of the property dispute. A week later, I received an angry call from the husband. He was much less subtle than his wife had been. "Look, I don't know what your problem is, but you need to drop this right now," he said. "I'm not some pushover. I've got connections in this town that you wouldn't believe." "This isn't personal," I replied. "You built on land that doesn't belong to you, destroyed protected habitat, and are now trying to sell it fraudulently." "It was empty forest. Nobody was using it," he shouted. "Do you know how much money we've put into improving that property? We're not tearing anything down." "That's not for you to decide anymore," I said before hanging up. I later learned from my attorney that he was indeed somewhat connected locally. He ran an insurance agency and sponsored several community events. But connections only get you so far when you're clearly in the wrong. When we met for mediation, their attitude had completely changed. Instead of the entitled attitude, they now claimed it was all an honest mistake and they had been misled by their contractor about the property boundaries. Their attorney proposed a settlement where they would purchase the disputed land from me at a fair market value of $5,000 per acre, a total of about $25,000. I refused. This wasn't just about money or land. It was about the irreparable damage to a forest my family had protected for generations. My grandfather would have been heartbroken to see those ancient trees cut down for a swimming pool. "This land is not for sale at any price," I told them firmly. "It needs to be restored as much as possible to its natural state." Their attorney scoffed. "You can't possibly expect my clients to tear down a $120,000 pool installation. Be reasonable." My environmental attorney stepped in. "Your clients should have been reasonable before destroying protected wetlands and removing survey markers, which, by the way, is a separate offense in this state." The mediation ended without resolution, and a court date was set for 3 months later. During that time, I connected with a local conservation group that my grandfather had been active with. They helped document the environmental damage and provided expert testimony about the ecological value of the property. Several longtime residents who knew my grandfather also came forward to support my case. I also discovered something particularly damning. Through a local hiking group, I found people who had attended their pool parties and were willing to make statements. According to these witnesses, the couple had explicitly bragged about acquiring extra land from the abandoned forest behind their property and saving it from going to waste. One witness even had text messages where they admitted knowing it wasn't originally their land. The day of the hearing was intense. Their attorney tried to paint me as an absentee landowner who wasn't using the property, while they were improving unused land. My attorneys countered with the extensive documentation of my regular visits, my grandfather's conservation work, and the registered protected status of the area. The environmental officer who testified explained in detail the damage they had caused. The partial filling of the wetland had disrupted water flow patterns that sustained several protected plant species, including the state-listed swamp milkweed and turtlehead plants that are crucial for certain endangered butterfly species. The removal of the mature oaks had eliminated nesting sites for several bird species of conservation concern. Their expert tried to downplay the environmental impact, suggesting that the land was degraded and not particularly valuable from an ecological standpoint. This backfired spectacularly when my environmental attorney presented my grandfather's detailed annual surveys showing the biodiversity of the area, including photographic evidence of the very trees they had cut down. The judge was clearly not impressed by their arguments, especially when our side presented evidence of the pool party business they'd been running and the social media posts bragging about expanding their property. The final nail in the coffin was when the county environmental officer testified about the impact on the protected wetland area, which carried potential fines of up to $10,000 per day of violation. The judgment came down decisively in my favor. They were ordered to remove the fence entirely and restore the original property line. Pay for a comprehensive environmental restoration plan for the damaged areas, to be developed by a state-approved ecological restoration firm. Pay damages for the timber value of the trees they removed, which was assessed at $32,400. Face county fines for the permit violations and environmental damage totaling $45,000. Pay my legal fees of approximately $28,000. Issue a public correction regarding the property boundaries. Additionally, because of the permit fraud, they were required to partially demolish portions of the pool deck that encroached on the protected wetland setback zone, which was set at 100 feet from the edge of the wetland. Their dream backyard was about to become a very expensive nightmare. The total damages and restoration costs came to just over $175,000. I heard through local gossip that her husband, who ran that local insurance agency, took a significant hit to his business reputation over the incident. Apparently, people were questioning whether someone who would falsify property documents could be trusted with insurance matters. The aftermath was both satisfying and sad. Satisfying because justice was served, but sad because the damage to the forest couldn't be completely undone. Some of those trees had been growing since before the Civil War, and no amount of money could bring them back. Instead of pocketing the settlement money, I decided to honor my grandfather's legacy. I used the funds to establish a formal conservation easement on the property, ensuring it would be protected in perpetuity. I worked with the local conservation group to restore the damaged areas, replanting native species and rebuilding the wetland habitat. The restoration experts selected young swamp white oaks, shagbark hickories, and other native species to replace the lost trees. They rebuilt the wetland hydrology and replanted native wetland vegetation. It would take decades for the trees to mature, but at least the process had begun. I also installed a comprehensive security system with cameras at key points around the property, along with new, very visible boundary markers. The conservation group helped me create educational markers along the walking paths, and we now host regular nature walks for local schoolchildren. One unexpected benefit of the whole ordeal was the attention it brought to conservation issues in our community. The local newspaper covered the story, and many people became interested in the forest and its ecological importance. The conservation group saw an uptick in membership, and there was renewed interest in protecting other natural areas in the region. The final twist in the story came about 6 months after the judgment, when they put their house on the market again, this time with the correct acreage listed at a much lower asking price. By law, they had to disclose the property dispute and environmental violations to potential buyers. From what I heard, they ended up selling for about 30% below their original asking price and moved to another state. A young family bought the house, and I made a point of introducing myself to them early on. They were horrified when I told them what the previous owners had done and assured me they had no interest in expanding into the forest. In fact, their children were excited about living next to a nature preserve. "We moved here partly because of the forest," the father told me. "We wanted our kids to grow up appreciating nature, not just staring at screens all day." We worked out an agreement where their children could use a small defined area of my property as a nature play space, with the understanding that they would help with maintenance and respect the boundaries. It's the kind of neighborly relationship I wish I could have had with the previous owners. My forest is healing now. New saplings are growing where the fence once cut through the property. The wetland area is slowly recovering, with native plants returning. The conservation easement ensures that even after I'm gone, the land will remain protected. I've continued my grandfather's tradition of documenting the property's ecology. Every month, I record observations about plant growth, wildlife sightings, and the overall health of the ecosystem. I've started bringing my own nieces and nephews to the property, teaching them what my grandfather taught me, that we're just caretakers of the land for future generations. Last week, I was walking the property and found a young family standing at the edge of the path near where the fence had been. They'd come from a nearby neighborhood for one of the public nature walks. "My dad used to bring me here when I was little," the father told me. "He knew the old man who took care of this place. It's amazing that it's still here when so much forest has been developed." I smiled, thinking of my grandfather. "We're just its caretakers for a little while," I told him, echoing my grandfather's words. "I'm glad you're sharing it with your children." Sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning a legal battle, it's ensuring that what you fought for continues to bring joy and value long after the conflict is over. My entitled neighbors thought they could take advantage of an unused forest and an absentee landowner. What they didn't count on was facing someone who understood the true value of what they were trying to steal. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. It would have been simpler to accept their settlement offer and walk away, but that would have betrayed my grandfather's legacy and the land he loved. I also learned the importance of documentation and persistence. Without my grandfather's meticulous records and survey documents, proving my case would have been much harder. And without the support of the local conservation community and longtime residents who knew my grandfather, I might have felt too overwhelmed to fight a well-connected local businessman. The restoration work continues to this day. We've planted over 50 new trees, restored nearly an acre of wetland, and created habitat features for wildlife. The land isn't the same as it was before. Those ancient trees are gone forever, but it's healing. Nature is resilient when given the chance. Last month, I spotted a pair of pileated woodpeckers nesting in a dead snagweed left standing specifically for that purpose. My grandfather used to point them out to me when I was young, explaining their ecological role in creating habitat for other species. Seeing them return felt like his approval of our restoration efforts. I've also started a small scholarship fund with some of the settlement money, helping local students pursue degrees in environmental science and conservation. It's named after my grandfather, ensuring his legacy continues in more ways than one. The next time someone tells you that a forest is just unused land, remember that every acre of undeveloped natural space is someone's inheritance, whether it belongs to a family, a community, or the planet itself. And sometimes, standing up for that inheritance means teaching someone an expensive lesson about respecting boundaries, both legal and environmental. As my grandfather would say, the trees were here long before us, and with a little help, they'll be here long after we're gone. I'm proud to have played a small part in making sure that remains true for at least one small corner of the world. The next one is entitled People Story. I had been dating Lawrence for 4 months when he told me he was being sent away for work. He works as a project manager and had to move across the country to help with a new development. I really enjoyed being with Lawrence and was sad that he was moving away, but I made it clear that I did not want to do long distance. It wasn't for me. I had tried it with other boyfriends in the past with little success, but it's only 3 months, was what he said to me. We talked about it more in depth and he explained to me that he only had to be there for the initial launch and to help get things moving, and then they were sending him back after 3 months. We talked more about the situation and I agreed to it. 3 months was not bad at all, and it's not like I wanted to be with anybody else. He was an incredibly caring and attentive long-distance boyfriend. It was hard the way that all long-distance relationships were hard, but he put in a lot of effort to make things work. He even surprise visited me once a month. Well, Reddit, it has been 3 months, and guess what? He's not coming back. He just told me that he actually sent away permanently, not to help set up, but to run the whole development. It was a big promotion for him, but he didn't want to let me go and he knew I was not willing to do long distance, so he basically lied. He figured that if I got a taste of what long distance with him was like, I would change my mind and want to stay with him. He doesn't understand why I am furious. The big part of why I have been okay with doing long distance with him is because I knew it was temporary. It's like he tried to trap me into a longer relationship. I don't know what to do. I don't want to do long distance, even if he does visit me once a month. But I am especially angry that he doesn't understand why what he did was not okay. He basically stole 3 months from me. He is coming back this weekend. I had a whole thing planned for it. I got us a nice hotel at a nearby beach and booked restaurant reservations. Except now his return is actually just another visit. Update: I'm literally shaking as I type this. So much has happened in the mere days since I posted. So, after reading and considering all your comments, I break up with him immediately. I honestly didn't even want to wait to do it in person because I was so angry, and because I had decided to do the romantic beach trip with my best friend instead, so I wasn't going to wait for him to get there. I explained very clearly why what he did was such an awful thing to do to a person. He apologizes for lying to me for months. He's sad and hurt about what happens, tries to convince me to stay with him, all that crap, but I am firm and he eventually accepts it. The next day he is in a Facebook relationship with somebody else. I check his Facebook and all of a sudden there are months of posts of him and this new girl visible to me. Posts that he had clearly hidden from me that he made available to me now. They clearly have been together for the last 2 months. I freak out. I call and text him, nothing. I message him on Facebook, nothing. Radio silence. He's totally cut me out. I am infuriated, and I message this new girl on Facebook. I don't want to waste my time with this, so I type up a long message explaining our relationship, including screenshots of our texts, pictures of us together, even photos of gifts/cards he has given me. New girl responds, and this is an exact quote. "Yeah, he told me you would too this. Listen, from one woman to another, please consider getting some professional help. You can't keep doing this every time he enters a new relationship. It's unhealthy. Learn to move on. I am now blocking you. Please do not try to contact me again. SO, yeah. That's it. I'm in shock. I'm humiliated. I'm so angry. I'm leaving for the beach with my best friend this evening, which will be much, much needed." The next one is entitled People Story. My ex-girlfriend Kelly and I broke up extremely amicably. She admitted she didn't feel any romantic attraction to me anymore, wanted to focus on school, but I was her best friend. I felt the same exact way. We were best friends even after. She even introduced me to her best friend, Amanda, who I have been with since we met. We did everything together. Kelly had never really been interested in guys because of her schoolwork, but she graduated, got a job, made great career advancements, and now she's looking to settle down and she got a boyfriend. They've been together about 6 months and are discussing marriage. She invited us to Friday night game night this week. We all get together and she told Amanda he would be there and he'd probably be moving in when his lease ends, which makes me not want to go over anymore. So, I told Kelly I didn't want to go if he is, and she got extremely hurt, told me that it wasn't fair because she thought we were friends, and hasn't spoken to me but has also asked Amanda to refrain from texting her until she's ready, because she needs some space to process and she's under stress at work. Game night is still going. Kelly invited the rest of our group as normal. Amanda is barely speaking to me and called me a hypocrite and will go without me if she's asked. Kelly chose to be my friend, and she was already Amanda's. I don't see why I have to choose to be friends with someone else just to be friends with Kelly. My fiancé said that he's been around 6 months and they are talking of marriage, and if I wanted to stay her friend, it'd mean sometimes interacting. Kelly doesn't do anything lightly, so this is very serious. But I don't really care to meet him, but Kelly is still one of my closest friends. She'd be there at 3 a.m. if there was an emergency. Update. I got, rightfully, torn apart in my last thread. I was being stupid about it, and it actually cost me everything. I kept refusing to meet him for another week or so. Amanda and Kelly didn't buy that I had no more feelings for Kelly. Amanda then felt like she was a placeholder for when Kelly was single. Amanda and I got into a huge argument about it, and I told her that if Kelly meant more to her than I do, she was free to go over to Kelly's anytime. We went to separate rooms and went to sleep. She was gone when I woke up for work, so I left her a note apologizing and wanting to talk when I came home. I returned home from work to find that Amanda had moved out and in with Kelly, who had just finished closing on a new place. After some deep introspection, I realized I liked the attention both girls lavished on me and I enjoyed being the center of attention. The new boyfriend would have taken that way. None of it matters now. Amanda talked to me once after she left, and that was pretty much to tell me that she's happier without me. Kelly gave her a good rental price on the mother-in-law suite that came attached with the house. She has no desire to come back. I have been cut from the gaming groups we were in minus 1 or 2 people. I know they still go and host it because they had a big housewarming game night and my friends were tagged in it. I feel lost. The next one is entitled People Story. I, 32 meters, have been married to my wife Vivian, 29F, for 6 years. We have 3 kids. I have several siblings, but this instance revolves around a half-brother Trevor, 18, who lives out of state. Trevor came to visit over his spring break. My stepmom has never liked Trevor, mostly because she doesn't like his mother. About 3 days into Trevor's visit, my stepmom kept making snarky comments about him, his mom, his family, school, his tattoo, etc. Trevor got tired of this and grabbed his car keys and said he was leaving. This was around 11 p.m. My stepmom laughs and says he doesn't have enough gas to get home or money to get more. Trevor said that he didn't need enough gas or money to get home. He just needed enough gas to get to my house. My stepmom laughs again and says I'm not even home. I'm at work, which was true. I work nights, and that Vivian, my wife, would never let him stay here. Trevor says I guess we'll see because he knew Vivian wouldn't tell him no and leaves. My stepmother then calls my wife and tells her that Trevor is on his way to our house and under no circumstances is Vivian to allow him to stay with us. Vivian says she's not going to turn him away, especially not in the middle of the night, and that everybody can all talk about it tomorrow. She'll let me know to call my dad when I get a chance to figure out what's going on. My stepmom begins to get angry and says that Trevor is not Vivian's child to allow to do whatever he wants, and Vivian needs to respect her as the mother of the family, and that she can make life in the family difficult for Vivian if she needs to for Vivian to understand her place. And that Vivian has no right to let people into my name's home without my knowledge. There were other things said as well, and eventually Vivian loses her patience and ends the call by saying that my stepmom is just mad she can't be a F-bomb bully to Trevor anymore because he found a loophole. My stepmother calls me while I'm at work and tells me Vivian was rude to her. At this point I have no idea that anything has happened. She then calls my dad, he works nights as well, and tells some version of events. My dad calls me and tells me that Vivian was disrespectful and had no right to speak to her that way and needs to apologize for her behavior. I get a call about 5 minutes later from Vivian. She tells me that Trevor is at our house and they tell me everything that happened since Vivian wasn't at the house and Trevor wasn't there yet for the call. I call my dad and tell him that it doesn't sound like Vivian did anything except stand up for herself, and my dad insists that Vivian needs to apologize. I tell him if anybody is owed an apology, it's Vivian. This was all 3 days ago. I'm getting texts from family members about Vivian needing to apologize and that Vivian doesn't have the right to get involved with family squabbles and she shouldn't have let Trevor run away from the consequences of his actions, No one can tell me what the actions were. And if Vivian doesn't apologize, then she's not welcome around anymore. I don't think she owes an apology, but I had a bad relationship with my family for years when I was younger, and since it's improved drastically, I've been a lot happier having them in my life, and I don't want to lose that. But I also can't just allow someone in it to disrespect my wife so blatantly and expect an apology for it. But Vivian at this point is starting to feel bad, and she always stresses too much over absolutely anything she thinks she might have done to upset someone. So this really sent her on a series of mental gymnastics. And she says she doesn't want to be the reason I have a bad relationship with my family yet again. I've remained firm that she doesn't owe them anything, but I'd for not having her do it just to get it over with. Update. First of all, thank you for all the advice and kind words about Vivian. I spoke to my dad last night, and I wish I could say it went well, but I think absolutely no one expected it to. He put me on speaker and my stepmother was in the room with him. I said that Vivian will not be apologizing, and she is an adult who can make her own decisions about having a guest in our home. I don't control her decision making. My stepmom cut in with "You're controlling her now by deciding for her she can't make things right." To which I responded, "You might be right about that, but in this instance it's a risk I'm willing to take. She doesn't have anything to apologize for." I said, "I'm not going to allow you to continue to cause her or myself unnecessary stress." I also told them they can't seriously expect an apology after the way they acted, and if they did, they were borderline insane. You can't bully and belittle someone repeatedly and expect them to be okay with it forever. And you cannot threaten an adult and expect it to just go over nicely. I told them that if they were so willing to act like children and cut Vivian, and by extension, me and our children, out of the family, then we would save them the hassle and do it ourselves. I told them we would be blocking their numbers, along with everyone else. They tried to argue more, but I simply hung up, which might have been immature, but I was just done. I blocked everyone's numbers. About an hour later I get a Facebook message from my stepsister. I rarely use Facebook, so I forgot I had her as a friend on there. My stepsister is the only sibling who isn't my dad's and is only my stepmom's. She and Vivian have always been really close. She hasn't been involved in this situation at all, so I took the chance and called her. She asked me if everything her mom had told her was true, and I said most likely not, but this is what happened, and explained it all to her. She then told me several instances where her mom had been similar to her and her fiancé. She said she had wanted to cut ties a long time ago, but didn't want to be the only one in the family who was on the outs, as she doesn't have a dad, so no other family to turn to. She asked if I had really blocked them and planned to keep it that way. I said yes, and so did Vivian and Trevor. She said she'd call me back and hung up. About 20 minutes later I get a call from her again saying she had called my stepmom, her mom, and cut the cord with them as well, and had blocked their numbers too, as did her fiancé. So while I might have lost a decent amount of family members, I did actually get to keep the best two out of the bunch, plus obviously my wife and kids. Thanks to everyone for the advice. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.